Part 82. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 815. Not to mention how angry Wang Ling is now, he was just casually walking in the base, but suddenly he was transported through time and space by the Allies and moved into the Allied trap. He spent half his life before rushing out. There were still Allied troops chasing him. Under pressure every step of the way, Wang Ling didn't even have time to rest. The rabbit bit someone when he was anxious, let alone Wang Ling? He is indeed seriously injured now, but he has not lost his combat effectiveness. After this group of rocket pilots chased him, Wang Ling was also very annoyed. He immediately transformed into a king-level anti-aircraft infantry. With a curse, he aimed at the rocket pilots and fired wildly. Got up. Dong 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 dong. Dong 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 dong. Compared with ground firepower, Wang Ling's air defense is relatively weak, but that is also relative. The firepower of the king-level air defense infantry is comparable to the combined firepower of 5 or 6 elite air defense tracked vehicles, so why not is this a joke? Although the rocket pilots are fast, they are very resistant to fighting, especially the attacks of anti-aircraft guns. As a result, Wang Ling was annoyed and fired wildly. These more than 20 rocket pilots were unable to get into the fire. They circled and bombarded Wang Ling, and were all shot down halfway. TCH, with this kind of strength, you still dare to chase me? After putting down the anti-aircraft gun barrel, Wang Ling spit and looked down upon the Allies unceremoniously. However, after being despised, Wang Ling did not dare to stay too long, turned around and continued to run away. After all, the group of Grizzly tanks and Prism tanks were chasing behind them, and Wang Ling couldn't help but relax. The area of this war zone is really not small. If Wang Ling wants to run from the Allied base back to Yuri base, even if he lets go of his speed, it will take him 3 or 4 hours of continuous running. Normally, Wang Ling would have been able to do it with his physical fitness. However, now that Wang Ling was seriously injured, it was difficult to run for such a long time. As a result, he was only halfway through when his wounds were affected by strenuous activities. He spat out blood, then stopped and knelt down, breathing heavily. Buzzing. Taking advantage of this time, the Grizzly tank army, which had been chasing behind him, was getting closer and closer to him. However, after observing the electronic map, Wang Ling smiled sinisterly. After standing up, instead of running away, he turned around, holding the rifle, filled with murderous intent. During his escape, Yuri's base was not idle either. Almost immediately, they dispatched more than 30 laser UFOs to rush to rescue him. After this company's running around, these reinforcements finally approached the King Ling, and soon arrived directly above Wang Ling's head. With his seriously injured body facing the pursuit of more than 20 Grizzly tanks alone, Wang Ling did not want to directly confront the enemy head-on, but with the addition of this batch of laser UFOs, it would be completely different. Chase. Keep chasing. You bunch of brats, do you really think I can be killed by you so easily? Wang Ling couldn't help but curse out loud as he watched the Grizzly tank pursuers getting closer and closer on the electronic map. Not long after he cursed, the Grizzly tanks gradually broke into Wang Ling's fire circle. On the one hand, Wang Ling ordered the laser UFO army to attack, and on the other hand, he also used rifles to bombard them from a distance. As a result, the combination of these two fire powers caused the Grizzly tank group to be completely annihilated without being able to get in front of Wang Ling and fire a single shot. Under normal circumstances, Wang Ling could annihilate more than 20 Grizzly tanks by himself at the cost of more than a dozen shots, but his current seriously injured body did not allow him to do so. What's more, there are 6 light tanks watching from behind, which is enough to kill Wang Ling. But now, with laser UFOs approaching, Wang Ling no longer had any scruples. Before the light prism tank could approach, Wang Ling ordered the laser UFOs to dispatch in advance and exploded these laser UFOs. At this point, the pursuers at the Allied base were finally wiped out. With the protection of the laser UFO, Wang Ling was truly safe. However, after the safety issue was ensured, Wang Ling had no idea of returning to the base. He was furious now that he was being plotted by the Allies, so he shouted directly from the radio, "X, do what I arranged before, troops, bring them all to me. I can't wait until tomorrow, I have to kill this Allied base now. Wang Ling, you are still seriously injured. Why don't you rest for a while before making any plans? Stop talking nonsense. I can't bear this tone for a moment. Send troops immediately, immediately." Good. Yuri. Yuri carrying Wang Ling. Ordinary psychic troop members, as well as military structures such as psychic control towers and psychic control vehicles, control enemy infantry. As long as they enter the vehicle, the control connection will be interrupted. However, the control capabilities of the psychic beacon and even Yuri and his clones are too powerful, and there is no such constraint at all. Even if Wang Ling enters and exits the vehicle at will, this control will not be affected. Wang Ling was not worried about this issue. After the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle rushed here first, he dove in and took the time to recover from some injuries. Wang Ling's current physical strength is indeed almost abnormal, but his recovery ability is no better than that of ordinary elite soldiers. Serious injuries will take a long time to recover. However, Wang Ling can't care about this. As long as the combat effectiveness is not affected, he can continue to fight. While waiting, the Black Hawk fighter jets in the Allied base reloaded and launched a new round of bombing. Last time Wang Ling was busy escaping and could only hurriedly avoid the bombing missiles, but now, there are more than 30 laser UFOs ahead. As a result, Wang Ling directly ordered that the more than 30 laser UFOs be forcibly intercepted midway and killed all the Black Hawk fighters. After seeing the scene in the electronic video, Wang Ling snorted coldly, closed his eyes and continued to recuperate without making any further comments. During the period of recuperation, his physical injuries were gradually under control, and the Vanguard armies Get tanks and Tornado tanks arrived in the area one after another. Wang Ling did not wait for other tanks, vehicles, and infantry troops in the rear, but directly led these troops to start. Charge. These pioneer troops were not slow. They marched at a uniform speed and approached the Allied base in just over an hour. Wang Ling was annoyed, but he did not lose his mind and did not attack rashly. He still sent an army of laser UFOs and broke into the Allied base first. Braving the bombardment of anti-aircraft missiles, he forcibly absorbed 3 power plants before Wang Ling walked out of the air defense. The tracked vehicle led the remaining tanks to launch a strong attack. When Wang Ling escaped from trouble before, he shot and killed a large number of guards in this base, but now the power was forcibly cut off, and the defense strength was reduced again and again. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wang Ling seemed to be seeking revenge wildly. How could this Allied base withstand such a violent bombardment? Not long after the war started, it fell into decline. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 816. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Boom. 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 Go on, kill all the troops and buildings, no one is left. After successfully breaking into the Allied base, Wang Ling and the armored troops led by him were like tigers entering a flock of sheep, killing everyone in all directions. Their ferocious appearance was really frightening. Among them, Wang Ling's attack was the most violent. In the distance, a group of more than 40 infantrymen came from inside the base and tried to block Yuri's troops. However, they were shot and killed by Wang Ling from a very long distance. More than 20 tanks and vehicles of various types hurriedly came from all directions to block the Yuri base armored troops. However, while they were firing, Wang Ling was mixed in with the team and wiped them all out with an extremely ferocious posture. All the allied defenders within the range of firepower were targeted by Wang Ling and faced disaster. After wiping out the allied guards within the range of fire, Wang Ling remained merciless and transformed into a king-level SEAL team, quickly blowing up all the buildings within reach and leading the troops forward, constantly hearing rumors along the way. There were explosions and roars, and the whole scene was lively and cruel. Of course, the group of laser UFOs were not idle either. 3 of them were left alone to absorb the power plant, and the others began to act unscrupulously. Laser UFOs can also quickly emit laser light while moving. Relying on this ability, more than 30 laser UFOs quickly wandered throughout the Allied base, destroying all Allied guards and machine gun bunkers. The targets passed along the way were bombarded almost indiscriminately. The dazzling laser light fell, and all the guards within the range of the firepower could not escape the fate of being bombarded. This killing speed could almost compete with Wang Ling. Under their unscrupulous attack, all the guarding troops in the entire Allied base were quickly annihilated, and then together with Wang Ling and other armored troops, they quickly dismantled all the buildings. The area of the Allied base is very vast, and there are many buildings inside. However, no matter how many buildings there are, without the slightest resistance, they will not be able to hold on for long. They will soon be wiped out by the crazy troops, and they will be destroyed at the same time. The entire war zone was officially declared conquered. However, the purpose of Wang Ling's attack on this base this time was not to conquer the war zone, but purely for revenge. He personally led the troops to destroy the base. Wang Ling put the rifle on his shoulders, but he just snorted coldly, feeling nothing in his heart. There is no sense of joy in conquering a war zone. It is ironic to say that in order to attack, Wang Ling had ordered his troops very early and was waiting for the attack. However, the incident happened suddenly, and there was no warning about the Allied forces' plan against Wang Ling. Wang Ling escaped from the trap and was so furious that he had no intention of waiting for the infantry. Now the entire Allied base has been destroyed, but the infantry team participating in the attack has not yet arrived to the battlefield. It took a while before the 2 large infantry troops came into Wang Ling's sight and broke into the destroyed Allied base. They were all very embarrassed when they saw the traces of war everywhere. After the embarrassment, no one knew who was taking the lead, and they all cheered again. Boom! Wang Ling! Damn it, this guy has become so desperate that he is almost certain to die, yet he still can't deal with him and lets him escape. While Yuri's troops were cheering, General Bob was going crazy in the Allied General Headquarters. Wang Ling's threat once made him sleepless. In order to annihilate Wang Ling this time, the generals held several meetings and finally decided on this plan. They deployed various types of infantry killers in advance and used super weapons chrono movement forcibly photographed Wang Ling. The original plan was so seamless that no matter how strong Wang Ling was, there was no way he could run away. But who would have thought that Wang Ling really ran away and immediately led his troops to destroy the entire Allied base? This was like a huge slap on the face of General Bob. Ring. In this general command post, in addition to the staff, there are generals from all walks of life. However, facing the furious commander, none of these people dared to speak for a while. After General Bob's breathing gradually slowed down, a 4-star general argued, "General, in order to kill Wang Ling, we have tried our best to arrange and deploy, but the plan failed to keep up with the changes. None of us expected that Wang Ling was able to adapt to the tearing field of time and space teleportation so quickly, and opened fire before our trapped troops." With this general taking the lead, the other generals finally dared to speak up. "Yes, General, we have looked up to Wang Ling as highly as possible, but Wang Ling's actions are beyond our expectations." "That's right, the last time I used time and space teleportation, although Wang Ling was still alive after coming out, he lost any resistance. Who knew that he seemed to have gradually adapted to this torn field this second time? Just like that, he actually started to resist after taking the first step of time and space teleportation. Listen to your analysis, this Wang Ling is really terrifying. The tearing field of time and space teleportation cannot be endured by ordinary infantry, but Wang Ling survived twice in a row, and the damage he received was actually still serious. Getting smaller and smaller. You have adapted to it the second time, so wouldn't it be less likely to hurt him the third time? Then in the future, won't we be able to design him through time and space teleportation again? A group of generals, their fear of Wang Ling was clearly revealed in every word they said to me. Guessing that Wang Ling had gradually adapted to time and space teleportation, the faces of a group of generals became extremely ugly. No, it still works. However, there is one exception, such as General William. Wang Ling can continue to use time and space teleportation next time. However, the trap we designed needs to be changed, and infantry can no longer be used. Huh? General William, what do you mean? Can't you see? This time we failed. In addition to Wang Ling's adaptation to chrono-teleportation, there was also a big problem with the lineup. Wang Ling was able to suppress almost all the infantry and use infantry to surround him. It has no effect at all. Just like this trap, didn't he kill all the infantry blocking the way as soon as he showed up? Phantom tanks are effective, but the number is slightly less. If there are 3 or 4 more, maybe you can kill Wang Ling in one fell swoop. The most important thing is the light prism tower, which is too small. Wang Ling can suppress the ground troops, but he needs to get close to the building to blow it up. Next time, we can definitely use this feature to surround him, build at least 10 light prism towers to make it impossible for him to escape. To be on the safe side, deploy a dozen more phantom tanks and a few snipers around the periphery of the light prism towers for long-range targeting. I don't believe in this lineup. Wang Ling can still escape even if he reacts in advance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 817. If Wang Ling heard what General William said, he would definitely break out in a cold sweat. Indeed, Wang Ling escaped from the trap set by the Allies, but he was also seriously injured and in danger. If the Allied trap was really deployed as General William said, then Wang Ling would probably die here even if he had 9 lives. This General William had already proposed to unite the coalition forces when the Seoul Empire first emerged. When General Reagan designed Wang Ling to push him to the Seoul Empire and caused the coalition to be furious, he even proposed punishing Reagan. But now, facing Wang Ling's threat, he came up with a plan that was almost certain to kill Wang Ling. Even other generals within the Allied forces were a little surprised after hearing this decisiveness. Good plan. Yes. Just do it. Wang Ling will never be able to escape this kind of deployment. When the next time and space teleportation is ready, Wang Ling will die. While surprised, the generals' eyes lit up one after another, and then they spoke in agreement. Humph. Don't forget, Yuri is not a fool. However, General Bob, as the commander, poured cold water on him. Yuri spent so much effort to control Wang Ling, how could he just watch us plot Wang Ling? The time and space teleportation has already, after using it once, Yuri already knows our target and will definitely take precautions next time and won't let us succeed easily. This basin of cold water really aroused everyone present. They were originally complacent because they had a plan that could definitely kill Wang Ling, but they found it difficult to implement it. You can imagine how depressed these people were. After a while, it was General William who spoke. Sir, there is no chance at all. We will be ready for the time and space teleportation every once in a while, and if Yuri wants Wang Ling to capture the city for him, he will definitely have to do it again. It will appear on other battlefields. The Empire of Mind does not have a crack generator, so as long as he is exposed on the electronic map, we can take action at any time. Well, now it seems that this is the only way. The Allies are still upset because their plan to kill Wang Ling failed, but the coalition is not too comfortable either. Inside the Allied forces headquarters, PoortoRich witnessed the Allied forces' plan against Wang Ling and the process of Wang Ling's escape. He was so angry that he clenched his fists, and the expression on his face was somewhat ferocious. What a shameless Allied force! He was so angry back then. You used time and space teleportation to harm Wang Ling, and now you want to use this thing to kill Wang Ling. When you did it, didn't you care about the mood of our coalition forces at all? The atmosphere at the Allied forces headquarters was relatively relaxed compared to that of the Allied forces. Someone quickly responded to PoortoRich's words, "General, I'm afraid the Allied forces don't even care. Wang Ling is controlled by the Mind Empire. The threat from our two armies is too great. He remembers his old friendship and will not make things difficult for us as long as we stay away, but he is not lenient at all to the Allied forces, and the Allied forces are also driven into panic by him." Someone else echoed, "Yes, coach, with the help of the Mind Empire's technology, Wang Ling has dealt a huge blow to the Allies. I'm afraid they don't even care about what we think. But having said that, coach, Wang Ling can save them. Hope is getting slimmer and slimmer. Do we still have to wait and see? Coach, we don't want to take action against Wang Ling, but the threat from the Soul Empire is too great. Wang Ling's joining has given them even more power. If they continue to let it go, something big will happen," another general encouraged. PoortoRich sighed deeply and did not answer the question immediately. Instead, he asked, "Has the source of Wang Ling's control not been found yet?" "Not far away," a staff member replied, reporting to the coach, "These days we have been sending reconnaissance planes to explore according to the direction of Wang Ling's spiritual connection, but the distance is too far, and we have not been able to explore the source of control. Continue to explore. At this stage, maintain the status quo first, and try not to do anything with Wang Ling if you can." "Yes, coach." Because of Wang Ling's matter, both the coalition and allied forces are now in a state of distress. However, as the person involved, Wang Ling had no such concerns at all. After conquering the war zone, he did not return immediately. Instead, he lay directly on the ground, panting. Although his current body has the ability to recover, due to the limitations of the system, his recovery ability is still not as good as that of ordinary elite soldiers. The injuries to his body are still serious. Wang Ling is also tired now when he carries out a retaliatory attack despite such injuries. "Wang Ling, how are you doing now?" While he was resting, PoortoRich also asked via the radio. Wang Ling gasped and replied, "Don't worry, you won't die. These bastards even set up a plan on me. I'm really impatient to live." PoortoRich, Wang Ling was a little disdainful, but after being arrogant, he calmed down. "X, you sent those laser UFOs, right? It's rare that you care about my safety. But this time, thank you." PoortoRich was immediately surprised. "Hey, you can actually say thank you. It's really rare. Give some sunshine and you will shine. Ha ha ha." The war zone was successfully captured, and the psychic empire was not idle either. The two bases moved quickly, and a psychic beacon was quickly built in the center of the field area. In this field area, except during the battle period, there are basically no civilians coming and going, but the psychic empire still chooses to build a psychic beacon here, and the behavior is somewhat strange. However, Wang Ling did not ask any further questions. During these days, the location of the spiritual beacons for the construction of the spiritual empire was a bit strange. In addition to some cities, there are also towns, suburbs, mountainous areas, etc. One has even been built in a continuous river area, seemingly deliberately forming a mind control network. As for how big this mind control network is now and how long it will take to cover the whole world, Wang Ling doesn't care. It has been nearly 3 days since the psychic beacon was built and some defensive buildings were expanded. During this period of time, Wang Ling's injuries have completely recovered. According to past habits, after the spiritual beacon was completed, Wang Ling received the order to continue his campaign elsewhere. However, there were some exceptions today. He did receive a radio message from the Yuri clone. However, this message did not ask him to go on another expedition. Instead, it ordered him to return to the Ruishan branch. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 818. We fought well. Why did I suddenly retreat? For this reason, Wang Ling was a little puzzled for a while. But Yuri asked back, fighting well? How come I saw you were almost killed by the allies? Snort. When this matter was mentioned, Wang Ling became angry, but he couldn't refute anything. He could only snort and remain silent. Then Yuri explained, you pose too great a threat to the allies. The allies have tried every means to eradicate you, even using super weapons. This time, the plan failed, but what about next time? The allies are not fools, they will definitely plot against you next time, and their methods will be even more ruthless, leaving you with no way to escape. After hearing this, Wang Ling gritted his teeth in annoyance, but had to admit Yuri's statement. After all, he barely managed to escape this time and was seriously injured. Next time the allies put in a more difficult lineup, Wang Ling really has no confidence that he can escape. At this time, Yuri said again, we have tried our best to control you. I don't want you to be killed by the allies. Come back first and avoid the limelight. By the way, I also have a surprise for you. Surprise? What surprise? Wang Ling asked curiously. Yuri started a riddle, I want to know what it is. I'll tell you when I get back. TCH, pretending to be mysterious. Well, just because of your surprise, I have to go back and take a look. Wang Ling was more of a compromise than a compromise. Although his state was darkened, it was still not life-threatening. Just as General Bob, the commander of the Allied forces, had guessed, Yuri was really worried about letting Wang Ling stay on the battlefield. He would rather slow down the pace of the war and keep Wang Ling alive. After receiving the order to retreat, Wang Ling and Yuri X stopped staying on the battlefield. They got on the anti-aircraft tracked vehicle together and evacuated the war zone not long after. Wang Ling's participation in the battle this time really helped the Seoul Empire. In successive battles, he conquered nearly 10 war zones and successfully constructed nearly 10 psychic beacons, which also paved the way for the Seoul Empire's plan. Wang Ling, who had been copied by Yuri and taken as a prisoner, was even exempted from military salutes. Although some senior officials in the Seoul Empire seemed to comply with Yuri's decision, they secretly had some objections. However, as Wang Ling continued his battles and gradually achieved dazzling results, this group of people gradually shut up. Of course, Wang Ling didn't know these things, and he didn't bother to know. He spent most of the time in the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle on the return trip with his eyes closed to recuperate, which was very comfortable. However, although the Red Alert world is comfortable, Wang Ling is in a worse situation in the real world. After several hours of busy work, Xiao He and several people from the opposite dormitory have sent Wang Ling to the ambulance. Came to the hospital. When the doctors saw the blood on Wang Ling's body, they were also shocked and rushed to the emergency room. However, during the first aid process, these doctors were surprised to find that Wang Ling's wounds were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. It is true that Wang Ling's recovery ability is not as good as that of ordinary elite soldiers, but compared to normal people in the real world, it is already very abnormal. What's more, Wang Ling's deep consciousness is still lost in the world of Red Alert. He lives and fights at 10 times the speed. When the wounds fall into reality, he is naturally recovering at 10 times the speed. As a result, after a first aid session, Wang Ling's injuries were almost healed, and a group of doctors and nurses put on some bandages and pushed him out. "Doctor, how is he?" "Woof woof." The classmates from the opposite dormitory quickly grabbed the doctor and asked. The doctor was startled by Xiaohei and backed away. "Where did this dog come from? Get it away quickly. This is a hospital. Don't let such a large dog come in. What if it bites someone?" When Xiaohei heard this, he looked very aggrieved on the spot, and the doctor he saw was a little strange. The classmate opposite explained awkwardly, "Doctor, don't worry, Xiaohei is very good. Wang Ling is like this because Xiaohei dragged us to ask for help." "Oh? Really? This dog is quite smart. Doctor, let's not talk about Xiaohei for now. How is Wang Ling?" Don't worry, his life is not in danger. He seems to have special powers. He recovers from physical injuries much faster than ordinary people. We just gave him some anti-inflammatory drugs and bandaged him. That's his condition. He feels a little. It's strange, he is obviously alive and his vital signs are very strong, but he can't wake up no matter how he screams. How did he become like this?" "Doctor, you asked us this question to the right person. We, the damn ones, don't know. It's okay if you don't know. However, he won't be discharged from the hospital for a while and needs to be hospitalized for observation for a period of time. Although his vital signs are very strong, his body is strangely weak and he also needs to be injected with some nutritional fluid." After a lot of trouble, Wang Ling was finally admitted to the hospital in a daze. He was still wearing a sling bottle and delivering nutrient solution, as if he was a seriously ill patient. In fact, in reality, although Wang Ling's body is not as good as that of a severely ill patient, it is not too far behind. Although when he eats in the red alert world, his brain will simulate the feeling of satiety after a meal and secrete corresponding hormones, but it is not real eating after all. The brain can receive the signals from the red alert world and do things to the body. There are various reactions, but the energy does not appear in vain. Wang Ling's body, in reality, had been without eating or drinking for about 4 days in a row. A normal person would already have problems if he didn't eat or drink for so long. This means that Wang Ling, a little strong man, just sent a weak signal from his body. But if the time lasts longer, Wang Ling's health will also suffer from major problems. Therefore, Xiaohei and the 3 people from the opposite dormitory also saved Wang Ling's life by accident. The hospitalization and treatment expenses were naturally shared equally among the 3 of them. When they stayed in Wang Ling's ward, the 3 of them looked a little confused and sad. They also discussed telling the instructor about this, but Xiaohei heard it and barked and shook his head. Although it didn't know what was going on with Wang Ling, it still hoped in its mind not to escalate the situation. The 3 people had nothing to do. In the end, they listened to Xiaohei's opinion and did not announce Wang Ling's matter. Instead, they discussed with each other and took turns bringing Xiaohei to the hospital to see him and observe him for a few days to see Wang Ling's condition. Making a decision, this matter comes to an end. In reality, Wang Ling's health was a source of great worry, but in the red alert world, Wang Ling was still leisurely riding on an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle for more than a day before returning to the Ruishan branch. Arrive at the palace where Yuri's clone is located. The general-level psychic troops who had previously helped transfer control were also waiting aside. When Wang Ling returned, they nodded to him. Wang Ling glanced at them and ignored them. When he saw Yuri's clone, he didn't bow. He was about to ask what surprise he was talking about, but he didn't expect it. Yuri's clone suddenly released an extremely powerful mental pressure enveloped him indiscriminately. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 819. Buzz. Snort. The mental coercion came down, and Wang Ling's mind immediately started to buzz continuously. The Empire of the Mind is famous for its spiritual power. As the king of the Empire of the Mind, one can imagine how powerful the spiritual power of Yuri and his clones will be. Although Wang Ling once tried to convert the psychic troops and obtain the skill of mental coercion, the skill was very superficial and could only frighten some ordinary people in real life. It had almost no lethality, especially in the world of Red Alert. Nothing works. How could such a level of spiritual power be able to compete with a Yuri clone? Buzz. Ah. This continuous buzzing sound also made Wang Ling very painful and tormented. After enduring it for a while, he couldn't help but let out a scream, half knelt down, holding his head, and resisted bitterly. While resisting, Wang Ling felt that his consciousness was getting blurry and his eyelids were a little heavy. However, after all, even after enduring the pain of intermediate enhancement, Wang Ling did not collapse due to these tortures. When his eyes were getting darker and darker, he suddenly gritted his teeth and forcibly cheered up to keep himself clear. Buzz. After resisting like this for a while, Wang Ling gradually adapted to the torture and was able to endure it for a long time. But at this moment, Yuri's clone suddenly increased the intensity of his mental pressure, doubling Wang Ling's pressure. In the pain, Wang Ling's consciousness began to become hazy again, and hallucinations even appeared in his mind. In the hallucination, Wang Ling was once again surrounded by allied forces. The sense of fear and helplessness nearly filled Wang Ling's heart, making him feel even more tormented and painful. Under the previous Allied forces design, Wang Ling managed to escape, but in this illusion, Wang Ling had no ability to move. In the end, he watched the Allied troops kill him. The feeling of despair before death could almost make Wang Ling collapse. However, just when Wang Ling couldn't hold on and almost collapsed, this powerful mental pressure was suddenly cancelled by Yuri's clone, and the entire hall returned to normal. Hoo-hoo. After the pressure disappeared, Wang Ling also relaxed, maintaining his original half-kneeling posture, and gradually lowered his hands holding his head, breathing heavily in fear. But when he raised his head, he found that Yuri X and several other generals did not feel any discomfort at all. With the mental pressure just now, Wang Ling could feel that Yuri's clones were covering the entire hall indiscriminately. Yuri X and several generals were also within this coverage. But in the end, Wang Ling almost collapsed, but nothing happened to Yuri X and the others. This comparison also made Wang Ling feel very unhappy. His combat power is indeed strong enough to crush everyone present, but when it comes to mental strength, it is far behind them. After taking a few deep breaths, calming down his mind, and adjusting his tired spirit, Wang Ling stood up and asked directly out of frustration, "What do you mean?" The Yuri clone smiled and asked, "How do you feel?" Wang Ling gritted his teeth and replied in annoyance, "Exhausted, scared, almost collapsed." Ha ha ha! Unexpectedly, Yuri's clone burst into laughter after hearing this. "That's right. Your combat power is very strong, but your mental power is too weak. The only way is to keep releasing your mental power on you. Only by tempering yourself under pressure will your mental strength gradually become stronger. The closer you are to the edge of collapse, the easier it will be for you to grow." When Wang Ling heard this, he finally realized, "So you want to train my mental strength? Tell me earlier. You released your mental pressure on me as soon as we met. I thought you killed someone." "Ha ha ha, if I had said it earlier, would it still be a surprise?" Yuri's clone asked again. This time, before Wang Ling could answer, a general added, "The leader's spiritual power is so strong that it is rarely seen in the world. The leader only used less than half of his spiritual power just now. If this power continues to increase, we will also be affected. If we continue to improve and bring murderous intent, it will form a substantial shock wave. That is the power of killing, and even we cannot bear it." "What? Such strong mental pressure is less than half the power?" After hearing this, Wang Ling was shocked. He knew that his mental power was far behind Yuri's, but with only half the power, he almost collapsed. Isn't this gap too big? Yuri's clone was very satisfied with Wang Ling's expression and nodded with a smile. You will work hard to become stronger only if you know the gap. Wang Ling, your mental structure is very special and has great potential for growth. You will grow in the future. To what extent, even I can't figure it out. It's just that you don't have a specific method to train your mental power, which restricts your growth. But, I can help you. In this world, the way to enhance your mental power is there are many, but those methods are too crude and far from being able to develop your spiritual power. Only I can do it. So, your surprise is to develop my spiritual power. Wang Ling finally heard some clues. Yuri's clone nodded first, then shook his head and said with a smile, it can be said that it is, but not entirely. These days, you have fought for my soul empire, and accelerated the pace of my soul empire's global domination. You have accumulated enough military exploits. These military exploits are enough for you to become a high-level figure in the soul empire. You are qualified to go to the headquarters to meet me, and you are also qualified to learn all the plans and deployments of my soul empire from me. Really? Haha, that's my honor, Wang Ling said with a smile. In this state, Wang Ling actually didn't care at all about meeting Yuri himself and the plan and deployment of the soul empire. Yuri's clone continued, of course, before going to the headquarters, you still need the final step of strengthening and transformation, so that you can get rid of my special control and completely become a member of my spiritual empire. Huh? What do you mean? Wang Ling narrowed his eyes, a little confused. Yuri's clone smiled and said, the prerequisite for strengthening is that your spiritual power must be developed to the extreme that I can develop, otherwise it will be difficult to carry out subsequent transformation. As for this transformation, it is the latest development of my soul empire genetic potion. You should know that my empire of mind possesses the technology of gene mutation, which can transform normal humans into wild orcs. But that is only the most basic transformation, but the genetic potion is here basic enhanced transformation. If the gene mutation is just to transform into an ordinary wild beast, then your transformation is to become the king of all wild beasts, the king of wild beasts. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 820. King of Wild Beasts. Wang Ling murmured this word, looking thoughtful in silence. The Yuri clone kept smiling, looking very confident in his promise. However, this confidence seemed a little funny in Wang Ling's eyes. Sir, old man, are you kidding me? Huh? What's wrong? Yuri's clone's smile suddenly stopped and he asked quickly. Even Yuri X and several other clones were a little confused. Wang Ling looked disgusted. The kind of wild orcs out there? They are big, disgusting, perverted guys who can't put on clothes and can only wear a pair of big pants and run around naked. You want me to become that kind of guy? I won't do this nonsense. Puff. Hearing what he said, Yuri, one of the generals, hurriedly warned and reprimanded, Wang Ling, don't be ignorant of good and evil. Do you think that the Beast King can be transformed if he wants to? There are many officers and soldiers in the Soul Empire who want to participate in experimental transformation, but none of them have the ability to do so. Qualifications and abilities. Among countless people, the leader chose you to transform, which is a great honor for you. Cut. In this case, Wang Ling's immunity was quite strong. He buttoned his ears as if his left ear went in and his right ear went out. The general who just spoke suddenly felt like he had been punched in cotton. Quite frustrating. Ha ha ha. While these generals were depressed, Yuri's clone laughed wildly. After laughing enough, he said, you guy, Your thinking is really different from ordinary people. Opportunities that many people can't ask for, you actually dislike it? Is it because the wild orcs are a bit ugly that you don't want to be transformed? Wang Ling spread his hands, non-committal. Yuri couldn't laugh or cry. He knocked on the armrest of the seat and said leisurely, "Don't worry, the Beast King is different from ordinary beastmen. If the transformation is successful, you can freely use this power to control your original military type and mad beast. It doesn't matter if the Beast Kings switch between each other." Oh? Like this, Wang Ling finally got interested. With a thought, he transformed into a SEAL team, and then into an anti-aircraft infantry. Then the magnetic blast infantry and conscripts also transformed in turn, and finally changed into return to the elite combat soldiers. After looking at it, the Yuri clone smiled and nodded, "Yes, it's very similar to this." "Haha, is that so? If that's the case, then it's barely acceptable. Just think of it as having one more soldier at your side." Wang Ling smiled. The opportunity that others couldn't ask for, fell into his mouth. Reluctantly accepted. The other generals were a little ashamed after hearing this, but Yuri X, who knew Wang Ling very well, just curled his lips and didn't feel strange at all. After talking to Wang Ling, the Yuri clone smiled boldly and boasted, "Speaking of which, this genetic potion is really specially prepared for you. Most people can't bear the pain of transformation, but you can even resist the allies' chrono-teleportation, so this pain will definitely not be a problem for you." "Humph, who stipulated that a force can only have one hero unit? I just want to create another one, and it's also the strongest heroic unit." Good guy, Yuri is blatantly provoking the rules of the game. As a character in the game world, but with the idea of changing the rules of the game, Yuri's plan has to be said to be too crazy. It's not that the rules of the game cannot be changed at all, but this is not something that anyone can change. Although Yuri is the king of the Soul Empire, he still cannot change the nature of his game character, so he naturally does not have this qualification. And since the rules are being violated, there will be countermeasures in this world. And this countermeasure lies with Yuri X. Yuri. However, Wang Ling didn't care about all this, and still crossed his arms with the old god present. The Yuri clone did not notice this change, or in other words, did not think about it at all. After the grand plan was completed, he restrained himself slightly and finally said, "Okay, the mental pressure just now, you are already exhausted, so go rest today and start tomorrow with one-on-one special training." "Okay, then I'll retreat first. I'm really tired." Wang Ling was too lazy to stay any longer. He stretched, yawned, and retreated, returning to his room. After he left, "Yuri, what qualifications do you have to become the hero of my spiritual empire?" This sentence also resonated with several other generals, and they all nodded. Their attitude towards Wang Ling was also very cold, but they didn't express it because of the clone of leader Yuri. However, how can it be so easy to explain what the Yuri clone has already determined? Upon being protested, he immediately snorted coldly and released a mental pressure that was several times stronger than before, frightening Yuri X and even several generals. After a lot of violence, he took it back, and then said with a cold face, "My decision does not allow you to refute it." It is true that Wang Ling was a prisoner of the coalition forces, but after the transformation is successful, he will completely become my spiritual empire. Why not? Are you stronger than Wang Ling? If there can only be one heroic unit, do you think it will be you or Wang Ling in the end? But stop being so long-winded. There's nothing else to do, just step back. Yes, leader. Yuri X tried to continue to protest, but the Yuri clone's attitude was extremely tough, and Yuri. There was no other way. Yuri X could only give a military salute, turn around and retreat. However, after turning around, the expression on his face became even colder. "You guys should step back too." "Yes, leader." After Yuri X left, the Yuri clone also dismissed the remaining generals. When he was the only one left in the hall, Yuri's clone muttered to himself gloomily, "It's almost there. It's already very soon. Not everyone can participate in the transformation plan, but participating after that, Wangling, do you still hope to retain your own consciousness? After this is completed, you will be the most loyal puppet of my spiritual empire, and there is no need to retain any personality." Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 821. The Mind Empire, or Yuri's goal, is to control the world, which shows how strong his desire for control is. For Wangling, although Yuri retained his character and even strengthened his dark personality and strengthened his desire to fight, he was also difficult to command. This is of course not what Yuri wants to see. Everything is only temporary. After the transformation plan is completed, Wangling will be firmly in his hands. Of course, Wangling had no way of knowing the consequences of this transformation plan. Now he was lying on the bed in his private room, thinking about what had just happened. Among them, what impressed him most was the mental strength of Yuri's clone, which was so strong that it almost frightened him. "Tortured me until I almost had a mental breakdown, and it was less than half of his strength. How strong is this old man's mental strength? After special training, can I reach his level?" As he thought about it, Wangling couldn't help but feel a little more hopeful. Maintaining this expectation, Wangling closed his eyes and soon fell into a drowsy sleep. Early the next morning, Wangling got up, had breakfast, and walked around casually. Then he received a notification from Yuri's clone and went to the special training location. This special training location is also a special room in the palace. The area is not too big, only about 100 square meters. It is empty. Except for the Yuri clone and Wangling, there are no other people or objects. Are the conditions so simple? No equipment at all. Wangling couldn't help but become sarcastic after looking at it. But Yuri's clone asked instead, "What equipment can match my mental pressure?" "Wangling, since we are about to start special training, I will not show mercy and torture you until you are close to collapse. It won't end, so be prepared to endure suffering every day during these days." Buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, without waiting for Wangling to answer, Yuri's clone directly released powerful mental pressure. Snort. Being exposed to this pressure again, Wangling still couldn't help but groaned, his head buzzing. The mental coercion released by Yuri's clone this time is almost at the same level of power as the one released in the sudden attack yesterday. Wangling was caught off guard yesterday and could adapt to it with a little bit of endurance, and it is no problem today. After resisting for a period of time, the buzzing in his head became smaller and smaller, as if he had gradually adapted to this power. Buzz. However, Yuri's clone strengthened a bit immediately, reaching a level of power that nearly caused Wangling to collapse yesterday. Under such powerful oppression once again, Wangling couldn't help but let out a scream in pain, and his head was filled with pain. However, that's all. The mental pressure of Yuri's clone really has the effect of stimulating and enhancing Wangling's mental power. Under such pressure yesterday, Wangling almost collapsed in the hallucination, but after a late night's rest, his resistance became stronger and stronger. Today, with the same power, he couldn't even see any hallucinations. Oh! The change in Wangling's mental power was also noticed by Yuri's clone. After being slightly surprised, he smiled proudly. Buzz. It is a good thing to have enhanced mental power, but it is far from meeting the requirements of a Yuri clone, so the Yuri clone further strengthens this mental pressure. This enhancement seemed to instantly break through the bottom line of Wangling's tolerance. He had a splitting headache and subconsciously fell into horrific hallucinations. In the hallucination, he was still surrounded by a trap surrounded by the Allied forces. The fierce Allied forces around him, with the mentality of killing, launched a strong attack on him. The hallucination here is, in fact, Wang Ling's ideology. After all, he almost died under the encirclement of the Allied forces not long ago. This has been imprinted in his mind and has become a point of fear in his subconscious. The mental pressure of Yuri's clone only amplified this fear. When the group of Allied soldiers in the hallucination killed him, Wang Ling's mental consciousness was about to collapse. However, it seems that it is because of the increase in mental power, and also because the Yuri clone did it deliberately. In the hallucination, the surrounding Allied soldiers seemed to be playing infinite slow motion, always moving towards them. Wang Ling attacked, but Dan never actually killed him. And because of this, that fear continued, and Wang Ling's mental power was always hovering on the edge of collapse, but he never took the step of collapse. Just like that, no matter how long it took, Wang Ling suddenly heard a cold snort, which seemed to be from Yuri's clone. And with this cold snort, the original mental pressure actually increased a little bit again. Falling into Wang Ling's subconscious hallucination, the group of Allied soldiers who had been charging all the time disappeared. Instead, there was a small enclosed space, surrounded by darkness. Wang Ling stayed here. Inside, he was lonely and helpless, and the panic in his heart was unprecedented, torturing Wang Ling all the time. Is this his deepest fear? It's so strange, why is it like this? As the releaser of mental pressure, Yuri's clone also observed Wang Ling's illusion in his mental power and was a little surprised. It turned out that being surrounded by Allied forces before was just Wang Ling's superficial fear, and the Yuri clone forced Wang Ling's consciousness into this deepest fear through gradual oppression. Everyone's fear is different. However, Yuri and his clones have seen the most deep-seated fears, which are the fear of death. However, in a closed dark space like Wang Ling, it's the first time I've seen it. What does this dark space represent? Why is Wang Ling afraid? And it's the deepest fear, so what's going on? A series of questions lingered in his mind, but the Yuri clone couldn't come up with an answer. That's it, no matter what he has experienced, it doesn't matter anymore. If he couldn't think of it, he simply stopped thinking about it. Wang Ling would eventually be eliminated from consciousness anyway, so it didn't matter whether he knew it or not. In that dark space, Wang Ling was always tortured by a strong sense of fear, which was destroying his mind and squeezing his spiritual power all the time. However, this illusion also made this fear infinite. Zoom in, stay here, Wang Ling may collapse at almost any time. At this time, Wang Ling had forgotten that he was undergoing special training and had forgotten the concept of time. Under the torture, he could only try his best to protect his remaining intelligence. However, there is a limit to being strong. When the pressure reaches a certain level, no matter how strong you are, you can't bear it anymore. You don't know how long you have endured it. Wang Ling's consciousness finally reached the edge of collapse. But just when he was about to collapse, Yuri's clone suddenly revoked this mental pressure. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 822. Hoo. Huh. After the mental pressure was lifted, Wang Ling's consciousness finally returned from the dark space, and his originally hazy eyes gradually gained some brightness. However, this expression looked very tired, and there was a strong fear in the fatigue. Yesterday, Wang Ling woke up from the illusion of mental pressure. He was half kneeling. Today, he was even more embarrassed. He was lying directly on the ground, panting, and his clothes were soaked with sweat. He looked like that. Not to mention how embarrassed. Looking at his masterpiece, the Yuri clone seemed to be very satisfied. Before Wang Ling could recover, he smiled and said, "Not bad. Your spiritual power has grown faster than I expected. According to if you continue at this rate, it won't be long before you reach the level I expect." Hoo. Wang Ling didn't respond to him. This time, the fear and pressure he endured under the mental pressure were too great. Even with his adaptability, he couldn't recover for a while, and he just kept breathing heavily. Yuri's clone didn't find it strange. He turned around and said calmly, "That's it for today's special training. Get some rest early and continue tomorrow." After saying that, he left the room without looking back. After he left, a long period of time passed before Wang Ling gradually came back to his senses. He changed his previous vigorous and resolute style and sat up slowly, raking his hair with one hand. After a while, he complained, "Damn it! The price of becoming stronger is too high, this discomfort almost makes me collapse." After complaining, Wang Lingke slowly stood up again. Just as he was about to take a step forward, his body stumbled again and he almost fell. After barely stabilizing, he slowly walked out of the room. After leaving the room, Wang Ling realized that the world of Red Alert had now reached the dusk stage. After noticing this time, Wang Ling couldn't help complaining, "Why am I so uncomfortable? This old man Yuri has been training me all day long. Damn it, isn't this old man tired at all? Haha, where are you now? It's barely reached half of my mental power level, and it's just mental pressure. What does it mean if it lasts for a day?" Originally, Wang Ling just muttered casually, but who would have expected that Yuri's clone was not far away, and he was allowed to hear it. When Wang Ling looked over and felt embarrassed, the clone began to beat, "I, the releaser, are nothing, but you, the trainee, are almost collapsed. Wang Ling, although you have made rapid progress, you are still far from what I want. But there is still a lot to be done, and you still have a long way to go." He was still embarrassed at first, but after hearing this, Wang Ling cursed directly, "Damn! How long will the torture like today continue? Humph, continue until your mental power is strong enough. If you want to end this special training, then you have to work hard to become stronger until your mental power is no longer affected by me. At that time, the special training will naturally end." After Yuri's clone said these last words, he ignored Wang Ling and turned around to leave. But looking at his back, Wang Ling gritted his teeth. He is indeed very powerful in combat now, but in terms of mental strength, compared to Yuri, he is as fragile as a newborn baby. The frustration caused by this contrast made Wang Ling feel very unhappy. "Tch, why are you so arrogant? Just wait, I will surpass you sooner or later." This frustration also aroused Wang Ling's fighting spirit. He said a harsh word and shook his still aching head. After refreshing himself, he walked out of the palace and went out for dinner. Having been enveloped by that powerful mental pressure for a whole day, Wang Ling was indeed too tired now and went to bed early after dinner. The next day, the special training continued. This day's special training was much the same as yesterday. But the difference is that after yesterday's torture, Wang Ling's mental strength has increased to a certain extent, and it is strong enough to withstand shallow illusions. Even if he is trapped and killed by the allies in the illusion, Wang Ling will not to the point of collapse. While Yuri was surprised, he also continued to increase the intensity of his mental pressure, directly making him enter the deepest level of fearful fantasy. This was not the first time Wang Ling had entered that enclosed dark space, but under the pressure of his mental power, Wang Ling still felt boundless fear and almost collapsed. Hovering on the edge of collapse, the period lasted until evening, when the day's special training came to an end, and Wang Ling once again showed the same embarrassed look as yesterday. When he walked out of the room, Yuri X happened to pass by, but Wang Ling ignored him because he was tired. After he left, Yuri hostile. However, Yuri X did not take any action for a while and did not interfere with Wang Ling's special training. After resting all night, the special training started again the next day. After training to this point, Wang Ling had almost completely restrained the shallow fear illusion, and was able to face the trapping and killing of the allies in the illusion calmly. However, in the deep illusion, in that enclosed dark space, Wang Ling still showed extreme panic, which lasted until evening. One day, Another day, another day. During these days, Wang Ling was really tortured enough. The Yuri clone was really not polite at all, and would torture Wang Ling to the point of collapse every day. The effect of this is also very obvious. Wang Ling's mental power has made great progress, and he can almost compete with ordinary members of the psychic army. However, during the special training, Yuri's clone was also a little confused. Logically speaking, Wang Ling's mental power was so strong that he should have overcome his deepest fear, but Wang Ling was forced into that situation every time. In deep illusions, very strong fear will be revealed. This also made Yuri's clone curious. What is that dark space? For this reason, out of curiosity, the Yuri clone also asked Wang Ling after a special training. However, Wang Ling was even stranger than him and had no idea what was going on. There is no other way. Since no one knows the answer, we can only give up. After maintaining this kind of training for several days, Wang Ling's mental power began to surpass that of ordinary psychic troops. But how strong it is exactly remains to be verified. For this reason, early one morning, before the start of the special training, the Yuri clone specially arranged an experiment. He specially mobilized several villagers from the village at the foot of the mountain, and also called some Yuri recruits and gust tanks. They lined up as experimental subjects and let Wang Ling try mind control one after another. In the game, the same camp cannot be controlled, but in this red alert world, it is different. It's not that you can't control units of the same camp, but it's not necessary. But when it comes to experiments, there are no such rules. Wang Ling stood in front of these experimenters, holding his trouser pockets, and looked at a villager very casually. As the mental power in his mind was projected, a clear red connection was immediately connected to the villager's Tianling cap. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 823. Buzz. As this red spiritual power line was cast, the villager was successfully controlled by Wang Ling. However, whether in the game or out of the game, this is Wang Ling's first real use of mind control. The control is inevitably a bit unstable. The red connection flashes and seems to be interrupted at any time. For this reason, after the successful connection, Wang Ling spent some time to consolidate the connection. In order to have absolute control, Wang Ling directly suppressed all the personality of this villager. Later, this mind control was truly successful, and the villager completely became Wang Ling's subordinate, even a puppet. Through this control, Wang Ling understood why the psychic troops always suppress the character of enemy units when controlling them. This was all for the convenience of control. After all, the stronger the character, the harder it is to control. At the same time, Wang Ling also truly realized how powerful the control ability of Yuri and the psychic beacon was. Wang Ling was as tough as Wang Ling. He was still controlled under some manipulations, and his personality was not suppressed, and was even strengthened. With a dark character, it is easy to imagine how difficult it is to control. Unfortunately, the Yuri clone and the psychic beacon did it. How's it going, Wang Ling? Just as Wang Ling was sighing, Yuri's clone asked directly. Wang Ling came back to his senses and smiled with satisfaction. Is this the ability to control the mind? It's really good. Haha, that's natural. Ordinary psychic troops only have shockwave attacks and mind control, but you are different. You have many types of powerful arms, and now you have mastered mind control. Your combat effectiveness on the battlefield in the future will be even greater. A rising tide will lift all boats, Yuri's clone said confidently, and he was obviously very satisfied with Wang Ling's current performance. However, Wang Ling's expression was very strange, and it felt like a smile but not a smile. Really? Sir, old man, Look at what this is. Buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, a second spiritual connection was projected from the center of Wang Ling's eyebrows and connected to the Tianling cap of another villager. In an instant, his personality was suppressed and the connection was successfully established. Two people. Good guy, Wang Ling actually controlled two people at once. Seeing this scene, Yuri's new recruits who were participating in the experiment and waiting all gasped. Being in the Mind Empire, they have of course come into contact with many psychic troops, but this is the first time they have seen one person's mind control two people. Not only them, but even Yuri's clone was shocked. The light eyebrows were raised exaggeratedly, and the whole person had a stunned expression. As the king of the Mind Empire, what weird things have not been seen by Yuri and his clones? However, he had never seen this strange thing controlling two people, and he had never even heard of it. Hey, how are you? Just tell me something. Wang Ling, who was in this state, didn't realize that he had done something sensational, so he urged him with an impatient look on his face. The Yuri clone ignored him for a while. After looking at the two villagers who were being controlled at the same time for a while, he burst out laughing. Wang Ling was confused. After laughing, Yuri's clone sighed to himself, I found a treasure. I found a treasure. Ha ha ha, I spent so much money to control you, it's really not a loss at all. What? Wang Ling wrinkled his face, resisting the urge to beat him and urged, stop yelling and say it quickly. A group of Yuri recruits were ashamed. This guy dared to talk to the leader like this. However, the Yuri clone was not surprised in its excitement. After calming down a little, he said, multiple controls. Your mental power can actually achieve multiple controls. Wow, even me, this is the first time I have seen this. Something. Is it rare? More than that? In fact, within the Empire of Mind, some scientists have proposed the idea of multiple controls for individual soldiers, and even formulated targeted training plans. However, including me and X, all failed without exception. Since then we have understood that the skills of multiple control cannot be acquired through training at all. This is determined by the innate mental structure. Congenital. That's right. Psychic abilities are developed in the brain and are very mysterious. We can select some ordinary people with relatively outstanding mental abilities, train them, and even directly implant them into my clone tissue to become psychic troops. This group of troops, very strange, but their mental power is very simple, the structure is very ordinary, and it is difficult to further develop. However, there are some people who have particularly strong mental power and have developed it to the extreme. After my test, they were given the rank of officers after meeting the standards. Like the ones I've seen before? Their mental power is indeed very strong. That's natural. How can it be so easy to become the general of my spiritual empire? Of course, there are also extremely individual personnel with very unique mental structures, which can show different abilities after development. For example, the X you are familiar with, his use of mental power is very powerful. The shock wave can accurately avoid friendly units and focus on damaging enemy troops. Of course, the most surprising thing is that he can cover most military buildings with mental power, thereby directly controlling the entire building. Even I can't do this. At the beginning, I also noticed that your mental power structure was unique, so I had the idea of recruiting you. So, with this skill, in the Empire, can't mind control vehicles control multiple enemy units? There are also mind control towers. From a look at it, it seems that these multiple controls are not as rare as you said. This sentence amused the Yuri clone, you guy, you are carrying treasures but don't know it. These are different. If you can't eat enough with one piece of bread, just 2 pieces, or even 3 pieces. One push if the rocket can't be sent up to the sky, then 3 of them can go up together. This is the principle we use to design the mind control tower, which has 3 times the spiritual power of ordinary mind troops. It is equivalent to tying 3 people to the mind control tower. The same. The mind control vehicle is a bold idea of ours. It directly puts the enhanced artificial brain on the armored vehicle to strengthen the control ability, so it can be controlled multiple times. These are all artificially designed and transformed through scientific methods. Armor and buildings. But you are different, you are born with multiple controls, which is even rarer than X's control ability. Different dimension. Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 824. Tisk, from what you said, my ability is quite rare. After hearing this, Wang Ling felt quite elated. Everyone has vanity, and Wang Ling in this state is no exception. He is used to powerful combat abilities, and his newly acquired mind control is also different from ordinary people. Wang Ling is inevitably a little embarrassed. After hearing this, the other Yuri recruits even opened their mouths in an exaggerated manner, daring to call themselves I in front of leader Yuri. How tough does this guy have to be? However, not to mention Wang Ling's combat power, just his unique multiple controls alone qualified him to be so powerful. For this, Yuri's clone was not surprised and nodded with satisfaction. That's natural, so rare. It's enough to become a heroic unit of my spiritual empire together with. Haha, the hero of the Soul Empire? It sounds quite bluffing, but I don't seem to care about it at this point. Wang Ling lost his temper. Yuri's clone immediately couldn't laugh or cry, and hurriedly urged, try the effect of your control first, and try to give orders. Good. After Wang Ling responded, his attention turned to the 2 civilians who were being controlled. I didn't hear what he said, but the 2 civilians took 2 steps forward in unison, then separated a certain distance from each other, stood opposite each other, and then bent down and directly pinched each other, and they fell desperately. Fallen. A group of people just looked at the 2 of them, fighting for several minutes before they separated and returned to their original positions. It feels good. No wonder those psychic troops like mind control so much. Wang Lingling was delighted. It turned out that just now, Wang Ling had already sent a wrestling order to these 2 people. Through this test, Wang Ling learned that there are some unique connections between the controller of mind control and the controlled person. Within a certain distance, the controller can directly use the mind through that mental power connection. It is very convenient to use the power to give orders to the person being controlled. Of course, there are conditions for doing this, and it must be achieved within a certain distance. The length of this distance is related to the mental strength of the controller. In addition, the personality of the person being controlled needs to be suppressed as much as possible so that the message can be received in the mental connection. Like Wang Ling, who not only retained his personality, but even had his dark personality strengthened, he was unable to receive the Yuri clone's signal from the connection because the interference was too strong. Don't be happy too early. The mental resistance of ordinary civilians is very weak. With your mental strength, success is a matter of course. Next, let's try the infantry. These infantry are all based on the use of divine power. Weapons. After long-term training, it is inevitable that there will be some mental resistance. Try it and see if you can control it multiple times. Just as Wang Ling was laughing, Yuri's clone couldn't wait to urge him. Wang Ling did not refuse, nodded, and then interrupted the mental control of the 2 farmers. However, during this moment of interruption, Wang Ling selectively interfered with the thinking of the 2 farmers, just like hypnosis, blurring the memories during the period of being controlled. This was also Wang Ling's attempt, and the result of the attempt was quite successful. After the 2 farmers escaped from control, they both looked confused and seemed not to remember the specific events that happened during the period of being controlled. However, with the result, Wang Ling no longer cared about them, and then concentrated on casting a mental connection at a Yuri recruit. During the control process, Wang Ling clearly felt some resistance from his mental power. However, the intensity of this resistance was not as strong as Wang Ling's mental power. He was almost immediately overwhelmed by Wang Ling's direct mind control. After a few adjustments, it became stable. Got a mental connection. The attempt was successful, and Wang Ling couldn't help but smile a little. If he could control the infantry, it meant that his mind control ability could be applied in actual combat. Of course, this is not enough. There are multiple control skills at your disposal, so don't use them in vain. To this end, after stabilizing this Yuri recruit, Wang Ling immediately cast a second spiritual connection to control the second Yuri recruit. This ability of multiple control is not unlimited. If you control one more person, the difficulty will increase exponentially, and the mental resistance of the person being controlled will also increase the difficulty accordingly. As a result, although the mental connection of the second Yuri recruit was connected, it was extremely unstable and Wang Ling was unable to issue orders from it. It didn't even last long, because the Yuri recruit's own mental resistance resisted and the connection was forcibly interrupted. Failed. Damn it, the experiment failed, and Wang Ling felt quite unhappy. Even the Yuri clone frowned slightly. What a pity, what a pity. Your multiple controls cannot be applied on the battlefield yet. But there is no need to be surprised, after all, your special mental training is not over yet. With the strengthening of your mental power and these multiple controls will be put to use sooner or later. Humph, I hope so, Wang Ling said casually, then interrupted the control of Yuri's new recruits and turned to aim at the Gustav tank on the side. Although they are armored units, in the Red Alert world, these types of units have independent thinking, so they can be controlled. However, the difficulty of controlling this armored unit is even higher than that of infantry. For this reason, Wang Ling also had to do some special experiments. Buzz. As he cast a spiritual connection, a gustful tank was controlled as expected. After it was stabilized, under Wang Ling's order, it rotated the barrel back and forth like a fool. Later, Wang Ling aimed at the second tornado tank, but his mental power was connected. As soon as it came into contact with the target tornado tank, it was immediately bounced away, unable to control it for even half a second. Oh, it still doesn't work. This result from the experiment inevitably made Wang Ling feel a little frustrated. The Yuri clone also almost understood Wang Ling's current mental power level. The experiment came to an end and dismissed the experimenters with a wave of his hand. Then he said with a smile, "Currently, it seems that your mental power is stronger than that of ordinary psychic troops. Come on, we must be strong indeed. However, our strength is still very limited and we cannot control the second infantryman. There's no need to be so frustrated. Your special training is still far from perfect, and your mental potential is far from being explored. The effect you have now is beyond my expectation. As the special training progresses, your achievements in spiritual power will probably not be weaker than X. Then what are you talking about? Let's start special training now."